My name is Isabella, and at 32, I thought I knew my family. Last Thanksgiving, my sister Sarah delivered a cruel joke about my single status while our parents laughed along. What started as humiliating mockery turned into the most satisfying revenge story when I discovered the shocking truth behind their perfect family facade. Sometimes the people who hurt you the most are the ones hiding the darkest secrets, and karma has a twisted sense of timing that nobody sees coming until it's too late. Before we dive into this wild family drama that changed everything, let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. If you're ready for a story about family betrayal that'll leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about blood loyalty, smash that like button and hit subscribe because this gets absolutely insane. Trust me, you'll want to stick around for the explosive ending that nobody saw coming. The Thanksgiving dinner that destroyed everything started like any other family gathering. I drove 3 hours from my apartment in Chicago to my childhood home in suburban Milwaukee, carrying homemade pumpkin bread and genuine excitement to see everyone. My parents, Robert and Linda, had always been traditional Midwestern folks who valued family above everything else. My younger sister Sarah lived just 20 minutes away with her husband Marcus and their twin daughters, Emma and Sophia. Walking through the front door, I was immediately struck by how differently everyone treated me compared to Sarah. While she received warm hugs and compliments about her new haircut, I got polite nods and questions about whether I was still working too much. The subtle favoritism had always existed, but that day it felt more pronounced than ever. During dinner, Sarah kept making pointed comments about my lifestyle choices. When Dad mentioned needing help moving furniture next weekend, Sarah laughed and said I probably had nothing better to do since I did not have a husband or children to occupy my time. Mom chimed in, suggesting I should focus less on my marketing career and more on finding someone to settle down with before it was too late. The breaking point came during dessert. Sarah stood up dramatically, wine glass in hand, and announced she had something special to share. She looked directly at me with a smirk that should have warned me what was coming. Isabella, you always act like you're so independent and successful, she began, her voice dripping with false sympathy. But seriously, where's your husband and kids? Oh right, you don't have any. Meanwhile, some of us actually figured out how to build a real life. The room erupted in laughter. Not the uncomfortable, awkward kind that might signal disapproval of her cruelty, but genuine, hearty laughter from both parents. Dad actually slapped the table and said Sarah always knew how to keep Isabella humble. Mom nodded approvingly, adding that someone needed to give me a reality check about my priorities. Marcus shifted uncomfortably in his seat, clearly embarrassed by his wife's behavior, but said nothing. The twins, only 8 years old, sensed the tension and stopped eating their pie. I sat frozen, feeling like every insecurity I had ever buried was being displayed for family entertainment. That night, staying in my childhood bedroom, I couldn't sleep. The humiliation burned deeper than any breakup or professional rejection I had ever experienced. These were supposed to be the people who loved me unconditionally, yet they had chosen to mock my life choices in the cruelest possible way. I decided that weekend would be the last time I allowed myself to be their emotional punching bag. 2 weeks later, pure coincidence changed everything. I was grabbing coffee near my office when I spotted Marcus sitting alone at a corner table, looking absolutely miserable. He was supposed to be at work, according to Sarah's social media posts about him working overtime to provide for their family. Instead, he was having an intense, intimate conversation with a woman who definitely was not my sister. I watched from across the cafe as this unknown woman reached across the table to hold his hand. The gesture was tender, familiar, like something between people who had been together for a long time. Marcus looked around nervously, clearly worried about being seen, which told me everything I needed to know about the nature of their relationship. My initial instinct was to confront him immediately, but something stopped me. Maybe it was the humiliation from Thanksgiving, or maybe it was curiosity about how deep this deception ran, but I decided to observe instead. I discreetly took a few photos with my phone, making sure to capture their faces clearly. Over the next month, I conducted my own amateur investigation. I started paying attention to Marcus and Sarah's social media posts, looking for inconsistencies in their supposedly perfect life. Sarah constantly bragged about their marriage, sharing anniversary posts and couple photos with captions about finding her soulmate. Marcus played along, commenting heart emojis and love declarations on every post. But the more I watched, the more cracks I noticed. Marcus would claim to be working late on nights when his location showed him across town. Sarah would post about romantic date nights on evenings when Marcus was supposedly traveling for business. Their entire online presence was an elaborate performance designed to convince everyone, including probably themselves, that their marriage was everything mine was not. The breakthrough came when I decided to follow Marcus after work one evening. I felt slightly stalkerish, but the memory of Thanksgiving dinner motivated me to continue. He drove to a modest apartment complex on the other side of town, where the same woman from the coffee shop greeted him at the door. They embraced like reunited lovers, and he stayed there for over 3 hours. I researched the apartment complex online and discovered the woman's name through public records, Jennifer Martinez, a divorced mother of 2 who worked as a nurse at the local hospital. Her social media was private, but her professional LinkedIn showed she had been living in Milwaukee for over 2 years. This was not a new fling or workplace romance. This was a full-blown, long-term relationship that Marcus was maintaining alongside his marriage to my sister. The revelation about Marcus's double life should have filled me with righteous anger, but instead I felt something colder and more calculating. This was bigger than just catching my brother-in-law cheating. This was about the systematic way my family had treated me like a failure while elevating Sarah as the golden child who had figured out how to live properly. I spent the next 2 weeks documenting everything I could find about Marcus and Jennifer's relationship. I discovered they had been together for almost 18 months, which meant the affair had been ongoing during last year's Thanksgiving when Sarah first started making pointed comments about my single status. While my sister was publicly mocking me for not having a husband, her own husband was building an entire secret life with another woman. The evidence was overwhelming. Credit card statements I glimpsed when Marcus left his wallet open at a family dinner showed regular charges at restaurants across town on nights he claimed to be working late. His phone, which he guarded jealously, constantly buzzed with text messages that made him smile in ways I never saw when he was with Sarah. Most damning of all, I witnessed him leaving Jennifer's apartment early one Saturday morning, which meant he was spending entire nights away from his family. But discovering the affair was only the beginning. As I dug deeper into their finances and living situation, I uncovered something even more shocking. Sarah and Marcus were not the successful, stable couple they pretended to be. They were drowning in debt, behind on their mortgage, and barely keeping their heads above water financially. The perfect suburban home they lived in was actually owned by our parents, who had co-signed the mortgage when Marcus's credit proved insufficient. The luxury cars in their driveway were leased at rates they could barely afford, and Sarah's designer wardrobe came from credit cards that were maxed out beyond reason. Their entire lifestyle was a house of cards built on family money and borrowed time. Meanwhile, our parents constantly praised Sarah for her financial responsibility and adult decision-making, often contrasting her success with my apparently selfish choice to prioritize career over family. They had no idea their golden child was bleeding them dry while living a complete lie. I realized this was not just about revenge for one humiliating dinner. This was about exposing a pattern of deception that had been poisoning our family dynamics for years. Sarah had built her superiority complex on a foundation of lies, and our parents had been manipulated into enabling her fantasy while dismissing my genuine achievements. The more I learned, the angrier I became. Not the hot, impulsive anger that leads to confrontations and screaming matches, but the cold, methodical anger that plans and calculates and waits for the perfect moment to strike. Sarah had made her choice when she decided to humiliate me in front of the entire family. Now I was going to make mine. I started gathering documentation of everything I had discovered. Photos of Marcus and Jennifer together, screenshots of his location data showing him at her apartment, copies of financial records showing the debt and family dependency, and a timeline of when the affair had started relative to Sarah's increased hostility toward me. But I knew that simply presenting evidence would not be enough. I needed a strategy that would expose not just the cheating, but the entire web of lies and manipulation that had allowed Sarah to position herself as the successful sibling while treating me like a cautionary tale. The plan that emerged was elegant in its simplicity. Instead of confronting anyone privately or having dramatic one-on-one conversations, I would wait for the next family gathering and create a moment where the truth could not be denied or minimized. I would force everyone to see Sarah and Marcus for who they really were, in front of each other, with no opportunity for damage control or spin. Christmas was only 6 weeks away, which gave me time to gather any remaining evidence while maintaining my normal relationship with the family. I continued attending dinners and family events, smiling politely while Sarah made her passive-aggressive comments about my life choices. Every snide remark and condescending suggestion just added fuel to my determination. The hardest part was watching Sarah interact with her daughters, Emma and Sophia. They adored their father and had no idea their family was built on lies. I struggled with whether exposing Marcus would hurt them more than protecting them from the truth, but ultimately decided that children deserve to grow up in honest families, even if honesty comes with pain. I also had to confront my own motivations. Was I doing this to protect my family from financial exploitation and emotional manipulation, or was I simply seeking revenge for years of being treated as the family disappointment? The answer was probably both, and I had to be honest with myself about the satisfaction I would feel when Sarah's perfect life crumbled in front of everyone who had praised her at my expense. 3 weeks before Christmas, I had my final confirmation that this was the right choice. At a casual family dinner, Sarah made another pointed comment about my dating life, suggesting I was too picky and would end up alone if I did not lower my standards. Our parents nodded along approvingly, with Dad adding that I should take relationship advice from Sarah since she had figured out how to make marriage work. That night, I made copies of all my evidence and prepared for the Christmas gathering that would change our family forever. Sarah had chosen to build her self-esteem by tearing me down while living a complete lie. Now it was time for her to face the consequences of those choices. With Christmas approaching, I needed to make strategic decisions about timing and allies. The evidence against Marcus was rock solid, but I had learned enough about family dynamics to know that simply dumping information would not guarantee the outcome I wanted. People have an incredible ability to rationalize away uncomfortable truths, especially when those truths threaten their worldview about someone they love. My first priority was understanding exactly how deep the financial deception ran. Through careful observation and some detective work that probably crossed ethical boundaries, I discovered that Sarah and Marcus owed our parents over $60,000 in various loans and consigned debts. The perfect suburban lifestyle our parents constantly praised them for was actually being subsidized by Mom and Dad's retirement savings. Even more damaging was what I learned about their credit situation. Marcus had been using our father's excellent credit score to secure loans and credit cards that he could never qualify for on his own. Some of these accounts had our father listed as a cosigner, meaning Dad was legally responsible if Marcus defaulted. Given what I knew about Marcus's spending habits and divided attention between two households, default seemed increasingly likely. I also made a disturbing discovery about Sarah's role in the deception. She was not an innocent victim being lied to by her cheating husband. Text message evidence I glimpsed when she carelessly left her phone unlocked showed she knew about significant aspects of their financial problems. She was actively participating in hiding their debt from our parents while continuing to accept money from them under false pretenses. This revelation changed my entire perspective on the situation. Sarah was not just the beneficiary of Marcus's lies. She was a co-conspirator who had been manipulating our parents' trust and generosity while positioning herself as the responsible child. Every time she mocked my life choices, she was deflecting attention from her own moral failures. The week before Christmas, I made contact with Jennifer Martinez. This was the riskiest part of my plan, but I needed to understand her perspective and potentially gain an ally who could provide additional evidence. I sent her a carefully worded message through LinkedIn, identifying myself as Marcus's sister-in-law and requesting a private conversation about a family matter. To her credit, Jennifer agreed to meet me at a neutral location. She was nervous and defensive at first, clearly expecting confrontation or threats. Instead, I explained that I had discovered their relationship and was trying to understand the full scope of the deception affecting my family. What Jennifer told me was both heartbreaking and infuriating. Marcus had been lying to her almost as extensively as he had been lying to Sarah. He had told Jennifer that his marriage was essentially over, that he and Sarah were only staying together for the children, and that divorce proceedings were quietly underway. He had promised Jennifer they would be together openly once the legal complications were resolved. Jennifer had been waiting for over a year for Marcus to follow through on these promises. She genuinely believed she was in a relationship with a man who was ending his marriage, not carrying on an affair with no intention of leaving his wife. She had even started making plans for their future together, including introducing Marcus to her own children as someone who might become a permanent part of their lives. The manipulation ran even deeper than I had imagined. Marcus was not just cheating on Sarah, he was emotionally and financially exploiting Jennifer as well. He had borrowed money from her multiple times, always with promises to pay her back once his divorce was finalized and his assets were no longer tied up in legal proceedings. Jennifer had given him over $8,000 over the past year, money she could barely afford as a single mother working multiple shifts at the hospital. Most devastating of all, Jennifer revealed that Marcus had recently started pressuring her to move in with him. He claimed he had found them a perfect apartment where they could start fresh, but he needed her to cover the security deposit and first few months of rent until his financial situation stabilized. She was considering taking out a loan to make this happen, believing it was an investment in their shared future. I realized that exposing Marcus at Christmas would not just reveal his betrayal of Sarah, it would potentially save Jennifer from financial ruin and emotional devastation. She deserved to know that the man she loved was never planning to leave his wife and was actively stealing from both of the women in his life. Jennifer and I formed an unlikely alliance. She provided me with additional evidence of Marcus's lies, including text messages where he made promises about their future together and financial records showing the money she had lent him. In exchange, I helped her understand the reality of her situation and prepare for the emotional fallout that would come when the truth emerged. We also discovered that Marcus's lies extended beyond his personal relationships. He had been using his relationship with Jennifer to advance his career, claiming he was single and available for work assignments that required travel or relocation. His employer had no idea he was married with children, which had led to opportunities and promotions that should have gone to other candidates. The final piece of evidence came from an unexpected source. Emma, Sarah's 8-year-old daughter, innocently mentioned during a family dinner that Daddy had been teaching her about secrets. According to Emma, Marcus had explained that grown-ups sometimes had to keep special secrets to protect the people they loved, and that she should never tell Mommy about the nice lady who sometimes brought Daddy coffee when he picked the girls up from school. This revelation was simultaneously heartbreaking and enraging. Marcus was not just lying to the adults in his life, he was grooming his own children to participate in the deception. He was teaching Emma and Sophia that keeping secrets from their mother was normal and necessary, setting them up for a lifetime of confusion about honesty and trust in relationships. That night, I finalized my plan for Christmas dinner. I would not simply present evidence and hope for the best. I would create a situation where Marcus would be forced to confess his lies in front of everyone who mattered, with no opportunity for denial or manipulation. The truth would emerge naturally, in a way that made his deception impossible to ignore or rationalize away. The stage was set for a Christmas that would expose years of lies and force everyone in my family to confront uncomfortable truths about trust, favoritism, and the real difference between success and the appearance of success. Sarah had spent years building her identity around being the sister who had figured out how to live properly. In just a few days, that identity would crumble in front of everyone who had celebrated her supposed wisdom. But this was about more than just revenge. This was about protecting Jennifer from further financial and emotional exploitation, saving my parents from continued manipulation, and ensuring that Emma and Sophia grew up understanding the difference between love and lies. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for a family is force them to face the truth, no matter how painful that truth might be. Would you like me to continue with parts 5, 6, and 7? The Christmas confrontation and its explosive aftermath are coming up next. Christmas morning arrived with the kind of pristine snow that makes everything look deceptively peaceful. I drove to my parents' house carrying wrapped presents and a folder of evidence that would destroy the illusion of family harmony forever. Sarah and Marcus arrived early with the twins, all smiles and coordinated holiday outfits that screamed picture-perfect family. The morning proceeded normally, with gift exchanges and the usual chaos of children tearing through wrapping paper. Sarah made her predictable comments about my thoughtful but practical gifts, suggesting I might understand the joy of giving if I had children of my own. Our parents chuckled appreciatively, clearly enjoying what they saw as harmless sibling teasing. I waited until after lunch, when everyone was relaxed and settled in the living room. The twins were playing with their new toys, our parents were enjoying their traditional Christmas wine, and Sarah was holding court about her New Year's resolutions and family goals for the upcoming year. It was the perfect moment for maximum impact. Actually, I said, standing up casually, I have something special to share with everyone. It's about family, and love, and the importance of honesty in relationships. Sarah beamed, probably assuming I was finally going to announce a boyfriend or engagement. Our parents leaned forward expectantly. I pulled out my phone and opened the photo gallery I had carefully curated. Marcus, I was wondering if you could help me understand something. Last month I saw you at Riverside Coffee with someone who looked really familiar, but I could not quite place her. Maybe you remember? The color drained from Marcus's face instantly. He started to stammer something about work meetings, but I continued smoothly. Oh wait, I remember now. It was Jennifer Martinez, the nurse from General Hospital. You two seemed really close. Almost like. I paused dramatically, letting the silence stretch. Well, almost like a couple. Sarah laughed, but it sounded forced. Isabella, you're being ridiculous. Marcus works with lots of people. Just because he has coffee with a colleague doesn't mean anything inappropriate is happening. You're absolutely right, I agreed cheerfully. Coffee between colleagues is totally normal. But what about spending the night at her apartment 3 times a week for the past 18 months? Is that normal colleague behavior too? The room went dead silent. Marcus looked like he was going to be sick. Our father set down his wine glass with a sharp clink that seemed to echo in the sudden quiet. Emma looked up from her toys, sensing the change in atmosphere. Isabella, that's enough, our mother said sharply. I don't know what you think you saw, but making accusations on Christmas is completely inappropriate. You're right, Mom. Accusations are inappropriate. That's why I brought evidence instead. I held up my phone. Marcus, would you like to explain to everyone why your location data shows you at Jennifer's apartment every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday night? Or should I start with the text messages where you promised her you were getting divorced? Marcus finally found his voice, but it came out as a croak. Isabella, you don't understand the situation. It's complicated. Oh, I understand perfectly, I replied, my voice still calm and pleasant. What I don't understand is why Sarah has been mocking me for being single while her own husband has been building an entire second life with another woman. That seems like an interesting choice. Sarah shot to her feet, her face flushed with anger and humiliation. You're lying. Marcus would never, we have a good marriage. We're happy. Tell them, Marcus. Tell them she's making this up. But Marcus couldn't meet anyone's eyes. He stared at his hands, his shoulders slumped in defeat. The silence stretched until our father spoke in a voice I had never heard before, cold and controlled. Marcus. Look at me. Is what Isabella is saying true? Dad, It's not what it seems like. Is it true? Our father's voice could have cut glass. Marcus's confession came out in a whisper. Yes. The word hit the room like a physical blow. Sarah actually staggered, grabbing the back of a chair for support. Our mother gasped audibly. Emma started crying, though she probably did not understand why everyone was suddenly upset. But I was not finished. The affair was only the beginning. There's more, I continued, pulling out printed documents. Sarah, did you know that Marcus has been borrowing money from Jennifer? $8,000 so far, all under the pretense that he needed temporary help while finalizing divorce proceedings that were never actually happening. Sarah turned to stare at her husband with a look of growing horror. What divorce proceedings? Marcus, what is she talking about? And Mom, Dad, I continued, addressing my parents directly, did you know that the $60,000 you've lent Sarah and Marcus over the past 2 years hasn't been going toward their mortgage and family expenses like they claimed? Marcus has been using that money to maintain his double life, taking Jennifer on weekend trips and renting hotel rooms while telling you he was working overtime to support his family. Our father stood up slowly, his face a mask of barely controlled rage. $60,000 of our retirement money has been financing an affair? There's one more thing, I said, my voice finally showing some of the emotion I had been holding back. Emma, sweetheart, remember when Daddy taught you about keeping secrets from Mommy? About the nice lady who brings him coffee? Emma nodded innocently, not understanding the devastating impact of her confirmation. Daddy said grown-ups have special secrets to protect people they love. That was the moment Sarah completely broke down. She started screaming at Marcus, demanding answers, calling him every name she could think of while our parents sat in stunned silence. Marcus tried to explain, to justify, to minimize, but every word just made everything worse. The twins were crying now, frightened by their mother's hysteria and their grandfather's cold anger. I felt a moment of regret for traumatizing them, but I reminded myself that they deserved to grow up in a household based on truth, not lies. Get out. Our father's voice cut through Sarah's screaming. Marcus, get out of my house right now. Dad, please, let me explain. Get out. The roar was so loud that everyone in the room jumped. I had never seen our father lose control like that in my entire life. Marcus grabbed his coat and left without another word, abandoning his wife and children to face the wreckage he had created. Sarah collapsed onto the couch, sobbing uncontrollably while our mother tried to comfort her. The twins huddled together, scared and confused by the sudden destruction of their family Christmas. I had expected to feel triumphant in that moment, vindicated after years of being treated as the family failure. Instead, I felt hollow and sad, watching the pain I had caused ripple through everyone I loved. But I also felt something else, relief. The lies were finally over, and we could all start dealing with reality instead of the fantasy that had been poisoning our relationships for years. The days following Christmas were a whirlwind of devastating revelations and family chaos. Sarah moved back into our parents' house with the twins, her perfect suburban life having evaporated overnight. The house she had been so proud of was foreclosed within weeks once our parents discovered the extent of the financial deception and refused to continue subsidizing the mortgage. Marcus disappeared completely for 3 days after the confrontation. When he finally resurfaced, it was through a lawyer who delivered divorce papers and a confession that the financial situation was even worse than anyone had imagined. The debt extended beyond what I had discovered, including credit cards in Sarah's name that she knew nothing about and business loans secured against assets that did not actually exist. Jennifer Martinez called me 2 days after Christmas, her voice hollow with betrayal and disbelief. Marcus had vanished from her life as completely as he had vanished from ours, leaving her with $8,000 in debt and the crushing realization that their entire relationship had been built on lies. She was considering pressing charges for fraud, but her lawyer warned that recovering the money would be nearly impossible since Marcus had no assets and no steady income. The most heartbreaking aspect was watching Emma and Sophia try to process their new reality. They kept asking when Daddy was coming home and why Mommy cried all the time. Sarah struggled to explain this situation in age-appropriate terms, but how do you tell 8-year-olds that their father is a liar and a thief without destroying their ability to trust anyone ever again? Our parents aged years in a matter of days. Dad threw himself into damage control, meeting with lawyers and financial advisors to understand their legal exposure from co-signing Marcus's debts. Mom alternated between rage at Marcus and guilt about enabling Sarah's fantasy for so long. They had spent their retirement savings supporting what they believed was a stable young family, only to discover they had been funding an elaborate deception. The extended family learned the truth gradually, through whispered phone calls and carefully worded explanations. Cousins and aunts who had praised Sarah's perfect marriage at family gatherings were shocked into silence. The golden child narrative that had shaped family dynamics for years crumbled, leaving everyone to reassess their assumptions about success, responsibility, and appearances versus reality. Sarah herself went through stages of grief and denial. Initially, she blamed me entirely for destroying her life out of jealousy. She accused me of stalking Marcus, of setting him up, of timing the revelation for maximum humiliation. She could not or would not accept that Marcus's choices had consequences that existed independently of my decision to expose them. But as more details emerged about the extent of his deception, Sarah's anger shifted toward her husband. She discovered that he had been lying to her about almost everything for over 2 years. His supposed business trips were actually long weekends with Jennifer. His claims about working overtime were covers for spending time at his girlfriend's apartment. Even his affection for their children seemed calculated, designed to maintain his image as a devoted family man while he built an escape plan with another woman. The financial devastation was staggering. Beyond the money Marcus had stolen from both families, Sarah discovered that their entire lifestyle had been funded by debt she knew nothing about. The cars were leased at rates they could never afford. The credit cards were maxed out with purchases Marcus claimed were business expenses. Even the girls' private school tuition had been charged to cards that were now in default. 3 weeks after Christmas, Sarah attempted reconciliation with Marcus. He had been staying with a friend and making promises about counseling and changing his behavior. For a brief moment, it seemed like she might choose the familiar lie over the painful truth. But when she discovered that he had been in contact with Jennifer throughout their supposed separation, trying to convince his girlfriend that the Christmas revelation was a family misunderstanding, Sarah finally accepted that her marriage was irreparably broken. The divorce proceedings revealed even more shocking truths. Marcus had been planning to leave Sarah for months, gradually moving money and assets beyond her reach. He had consulted divorce lawyers about abandoning his parental responsibilities and minimizing child support obligations. The man our parents had welcomed as a son-in-law had been systematically planning to destroy their daughter's life while pretending to love her. My own relationships within the family were complicated during this period. Some relatives blamed me for the timing and method of my revelation. They argued that I should have spoken to Sarah privately or given Marcus a chance to confess before exposing everything in front of the children. Others supported my decision, pointing out that private conversations would have given Marcus and Sarah opportunities to cover up the truth or manipulate the narrative. Our parents went through their own reckoning about favoritism and assumptions. Dad admitted that he had always been harder on me because he assumed I could handle criticism better than Sarah. Mom acknowledged that she had praised Sarah's choices without really examining whether those choices were wise or honest. They both recognized that their different treatment of their daughters had contributed to the toxic dynamic that allowed Sarah's deception to flourish. The twins slowly began to adapt to their new reality. Emma stopped asking about keeping secrets, and both girls seemed relieved that the tension in their household had finally been explained. Children are remarkably resilient when adults stop lying to them, and Sarah deserved credit for being honest with her daughters once the truth was unavoidable. By Valentine's Day, the immediate crisis had settled into a new normal. Sarah and the girls were living with our parents while she looked for affordable housing and tried to rebuild her credit. Marcus was living across town with a friend who had been enabling his double life, working a series of temporary jobs to pay court-ordered child support. Jennifer had moved on with her life, wiser but financially wounded by her experience with a man who had exploited her trust and generosity. 6 months later, our family had found a new equilibrium built on honesty instead of illusion. Sarah eventually thanked me for exposing Marcus's lies, though it took her months to get there. She realized that I had saved her from years of continued deception and financial exploitation. The humiliation of the Christmas revelation was temporary, but the freedom from living a lie was permanent. The most surprising development was how much stronger Sarah became once she stopped pretending her life was perfect. Without the pressure of maintaining appearances, she discovered talents and interests she had neglected during her marriage. She went back to school to become a certified financial planner, using her experience with debt and deception to help other families avoid similar pitfalls. Our parents used the crisis as an opportunity to examine their own behavior and assumptions. They acknowledged that their favoritism had been unfair and damaging, creating a dynamic where Sarah felt pressured to appear perfect while I felt dismissed and undervalued. Family therapy helped us all communicate more honestly about our feelings and expectations. The twins thrived in their new environment. Living with their grandparents provided stability while Sarah rebuilt her life, and the absence of their father's lies and manipulation allowed them to develop honest, trusting relationships with the adults in their lives. Emma, in particular, seemed relieved to no longer carry the burden of keeping grown-up secrets. Marcus faded from our lives gradually. He maintained minimal contact with his daughters through court-mandated visitation, but his interest in fatherhood seemed to diminish once it could no longer serve his image as a devoted family man. The girls adapted to his absence better than anyone expected, probably because his presence had been so unreliable even when he lived with them. Jennifer and I became unlikely friends, bonded by our shared experience with Marcus's manipulation. She recovered financially within a year and started dating a fellow nurse who actually was recently divorced and genuinely interested in building a relationship based on truth. Her children, initially suspicious of any man their mother brought home, gradually warmed up to someone who treated them with consistent honesty and respect. The revelation had unexpected positive effects on my own life as well. Once the family drama settled, I found myself with deeper, more honest relationships with everyone I cared about. Without the constant undercurrent of judgment about my life choices, I felt more confident about dating and eventually met someone who appreciated my independence rather than seeing it as a character flaw. Our family gatherings became smaller but more genuine. Extended relatives who had been drawn to the drama of Sarah's perfect marriage found less to gossip about once we all started being honest about our challenges and imperfections. The people who stayed were the ones who valued authentic connection over appearances. Sarah and I developed a new relationship based on mutual respect rather than competition. She no longer needed to prove her worth by diminishing mine, and I no longer needed to defend my choices against her criticism. We discovered that we actually liked each other once we stopped performing our assigned roles in the family narrative. The most important lesson was that protecting people from consequences is not the same as protecting them from harm. By exposing Marcus's lies, I had caused immediate pain but prevented long-term damage. The twins learned early that love and honesty go together, which would serve them well in their future relationships. Sarah learned that her worth was not dependent on maintaining a perfect image, which freed her to pursue genuine happiness. 1 year after that devastating Christmas, we gathered again for the holiday. This time, the conversation was about real accomplishments, honest struggles, and authentic support for each other's journeys. Sarah talked openly about her challenges as a single mother and her excitement about her new career. I shared my relationship news without judgment or comparison to anyone else's path. The twins, now 9 years old, had adapted beautifully to their new reality. They talked about their father matter-of-factly, without the confusion and secrecy that had characterized their early childhood. Emma had stopped having nightmares about keeping secrets, and Sophia had developed a refreshing directness that suggested she would never tolerate lies in her own relationships. Our parents, though financially wounded by the experience, seemed happier and more relaxed than they had in years. They no longer had to navigate the stress of Marcus's manipulation or Sarah's performance anxiety. Their relationship with both daughters became more balanced and genuine once they stopped trying to manage our respective images. As we sat around the Christmas table, sharing stories and making plans, I reflected on the cost and value of truth-telling. The revelation had destroyed a marriage, devastated a family's finances, and traumatized 2 young children. But it had also freed everyone from a web of lies that was growing more destructive every day. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to enable someone else's deception, even when the truth causes pain. Sometimes karma needs assistance to work properly, and sometimes the best revenge is simply insisting that people face the consequences of their choices. Have you ever discovered a family secret that changed everything you thought you knew about the people closest to you? How did you handle the choice between protecting feelings and exposing truth? Drop your thoughts in the comments below because these situations are more common than people admit, and we can all learn from each other's experiences. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life drama that proves truth really is stranger than fiction. Share this with someone who needs to hear that sometimes the family disappointment is actually the one holding everyone accountable. Thank you for joining me on this journey through family betrayal and ultimate vindication. Remember that your worth is never determined by someone else's opinion of your life choices, and sometimes the people who mock your path are the ones walking on the shakiest ground. Here's to chosen family, honest relationships, and the sweet satisfaction of watching karma do its work when you help it along with a little truth-telling.